My name is Dave Gibbons, and I am the specialist photography technician here at Winchester School of Art. So this image is of me as a baby. I'm not sure what age, I'd say about 1. I'm dressed in the fashion of the era. Grandmother and grandfather's house in London in the Isle of Dogs, if I remember rightly. And I'm only basing that on the kind of a wallpaper behind and maybe a conversation that I'd had. There were so many things I remember. I remember that my granddad smoked, so there was a smell of tobacco. I think it was a pipe. I remember he had a chair that he'd always sit in. He kind of ruled the roost, if you like, but without. I think it was very much a case of what he said went, and everybody played along with that. But I do remember that something maybe my dad adopted and something I maybe struggled to respect. The other side of the coin is my nan, who lived with us when we were kids. That's my mother's mother. So her husband died even in the war in Burma. He was part of the British Expeditionary Force. So there was obviously a tinge of sadness around that. I never met him. My mum doesn't remember meeting him. He died when she was 3. There were photographs and there were stories. And in many ways, the idea was a story from a photograph. There's one in particular, he's standing, and back in the day, they would have kind of worn a shirt and trousers and a tie, and he'd been fishing and he had a trout that was about that high off the ground that he caught. And it was a thing of folklore. And I remember my nan always saying that I was very much kind of like him. I enjoyed fishing, I enjoyed the outdoors, and I think maybe she saw very much in him, in me. So there was quite a difference in the relationship through someone being present and not there, and someone not being present and there. And that was really all through stories and photographs. It's kind of weird because there's nostalgia attached to it, but I think, you know, that part of my family are pretty much all gone. My dad's now dead. My grandparents died some years ago. And in fact, so this is something that has come up afterwards. The family home then was sold. So my auntie lived there for many years, but when she died, it was sold, and then the proceeds weren't split equally. So it leaves a little bit of there's a chagrin there. You know, it was all a little bit unfair. But I think that was just because, you know, from my dad's perspective, he moved away from London, and I think he had quite a hard life there. So it's tinged with a little bit of melancholy. With my birth family, so to speak, the only person that I'm still in touch with is my mum. So that's a kind of fairly constant connection. I see her regularly, but I've got my own family now, and you know, that is kind of where my energy is mainly. So my family, well, as I said, there's 2 families. I've got my family that I was born into, and that's quite a complex family. There's only myself, my mother, and my brother left. My brother I had not seen really since 1992, which is a long time ago. There's a family falling out. I won't go into details, but you know, it's sad. So there's that side of it. But my own family, I've got 3 children and wives and extended family. That's where naturally the kind of energies are at the moment. When you've got kids, you're connected with them. My father was never really there and present in the way you might expect. So for me, being a father, I've learned from that. And I have an incredible relationship with my kids and my wife, and we're become very, very tight. Possibly without thinking about it, that feels kind of instinctive, the right way for it to be, natural, dare I say. Kind of hard, really, because we were quite close, but siblings, and he's 3 years younger than me. And at one point, we were working together. It was his business, but we were working together. Then he met somebody who was much older than him, like over 20 years. And they got together, and she kind of, she moved in, and we tried to air our concerns as a family and tried to have discussions, and he was particularly stubborn. And that was one element, but we had a falling out at work that was kind of quite nasty, and it meant that we were no longer working together. And whilst my dad and my mum and my nan and myself tried to resolve the situation, we were unable to kind of do so. So that was quite sad, and it's gone on for years. And I think for me, I removed myself from it because I've got a family and that was my focus. But when my dad died, my brother didn't attend the funeral, which I found really difficult. And that for me was, but I suppose, the final straw. We lived in Whittle on the council estate for a few years, and then when I think I was 6, we moved to a new council estate, Abbott's Barn, which is that way. And that was great because it was a new council estate, people coming together for the first time, lots of young families. Our house overlooked an incredibly big field with chestnut trees, and then it rolled down to a stream, and then there were some marshland. It's all this area over here, Winnell Moors, essentially. So that was our playground. So there was an awful lot of freedom. I think when we were younger, our parents could, my mother really, could easily watch us, call us in for tea, all that stuff, because there's a big space that we were playing in. As we got older and started to kind of like push the boundaries, we kind of probably were a little less controllable. But it was really exciting times because like the outdoors was our playground. And that's incredible because I don't think a lot of kids get that nowadays. And those fields I mentioned, we used to kind of build dens. Den building was that thing, and there were lots of opportunities. And one of the main ones was the big field opposite, the brums would grow, and they cut the hay and let it dry. So we used to build these big constructions that were our dens. And right next door to that, there was an orchard. And we used to scrump the apples and eat them, but also used to use them as kind of weapons to throw at the other dens. And it was great. And also, I really enjoyed fishing. So because, this area around here is renowned for fishing, I learned to fish, and I used to go off on adventures, trying to catch interesting fish, both legally and illegally. So the riverage in itself, there's a lot of private fishing with trout, etc. People pay a lot of money. As a naughty child, we would go and poach some of these fisheries, quite successfully actually, and then sell the fish to local restaurants, which is a good way of making money there. So, and there's probably lots more stories. So you never knew what you would discover. You're in the outdoors, like growing up close to nature. You're actually looking for stuff. So still now, if I walk past a river, I will look to spot fish and often see them. So it gave me an awareness and also, I think, an appreciation for the natural world, and that remains. I moved to Bristol for a period of time, about 2 or 3 years, which I enjoyed. And then I lived in London for a few years. And I thought that's where I was going to stay. But I was in a relationship. It ended. It was easier to kind of take stock and think what I would be doing. And then I decided to go find myself in India. So I went to India. I lost myself and found myself. And then whilst I was in India, I got a place to do an arts foundation here at Winchester School of Art. And I then got on the undergraduate degree here, and so I studied and did that. I come from a family where the expectations were not great. There were really no particular role models. Had no one to kind of look at. For example, no advice with regards to getting a job, apart from you need to get a job. So when I left school, I didn't go to college. I had okay grades, but I was fortunate that I got an apprenticeship as a carpenter, which gave me a trade and a qualification. And I think with all of this, you kind of get stuck in a situation. Like I was working, I wasn't necessarily happy with my job. It was okay. But I think being fortunate with friends and people I met and knew, and lots of reasons why these happen, but the opportunity kind of arose to try and better myself, and my younger self would have never realised that opportunity was there. When I left school, I knew nothing of university. I didn't know what it was, which is silly really, isn't it? So having done that, I think my younger self would have been quite proud. My passion for photography developed around capturing the world, and I think when I went to university, I was able to use the skills that I developed and apply them to developing ways of working. And still now, I have a passion for photography, but sometimes it ebbs and flows. So when you're kind of delivering kind of photographic education and helping students like you with kind of stuff, it can be potentially there's a lot of giving, so it can be quite exhausting, and sometimes you just need to kind of step away from it. So I find myself finding new ways to work, my own kind of practice, and it might be that photography at the moment, in a purest sense, is something I'm doing less of right now. But maybe there's other things that have piqued my interest, like, I don't know, photography and AI, or a moving image, a little bit more, that kind of stuff. And I think it's important as a visual artist working with lens-based generally stuff to kind of keep moving through the processes. So I keep it alive, and it's underpinned by photography, but it's not always photography. And Am I passionate about it? Yes, of course.